Welcome, everybody, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects. I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle, who, I got to say, Ian, jumped in head first on the interviewing stuff today. You're active participant, getting in there with your questions. You were aggressive. I liked it. I like this. I mean, intrepid journalist Ian Kundle.
Well, Jim forces it out. He brings the best out of me. And I think that it's always fun talking to him because he always throws it back at us. So you kind of have to be on your toes. You never know when you're going to get called upon to have to step to the plate. So
it's called the Socratic method. I dealt with it for 3 years.
That was a really, well, I guess I'm spoiling it, but really good interview coming up with Jim Callis of MLB.com, MLB Pipeline, MLB draft coverage, and everything else.
By the way, I should say, because during the draft coverage, like, the main desk of the draft coverage is what it is. Is what it's going to be. They're trying to make it accessible for the common fan. But like the Melanie Newman, Jim Callis, Carlos Collazo second desk they had going on Draft Night on MLB Network was solid.
Yeah, and then obviously Jim, Jonathan, and Melanie did the next 2 days too. So they
big fans of all of those people.
Hanging in through 20 rounds is an impressive achievement, especially when Jim's dropping knowledge on guys that they don't have ranked or
it's wild.
I've never heard of. So
wild.
Yeah,
he's the best. He's one of the best at what he does. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's
for sure. So we hope that you all enjoy our draft recap with Jim. Talked a little bit of Sox system with him as well, but just as we were talking, the schedule that MLB has done with this draft, Ian, is just not fair to folks like Jim, who just have to pivot immediately to the trade deadline.
No, I don't think teams like it either.
Teams hate it.
I mean, I understand
they're doing their coverage for next year's draft before this year's draft.
And you know what? It's interesting because I get why MLB does it. They're trying to make a whole spectacle out of it,
yeah.
But it's still counterintuitive to me because it's if you want to make a spectacle out of it, allow trading of picks. How exciting would day one of the draft be if there was a chance that the team picking third could trade their pick, like things like that, like do stuff like that. Don't just I don't know, don't just have it be later in the year so it coincides with All-Star weekend. If you're going to go that far, like go all in on it, make it try to turn it into what the NBA has done, where it becomes one of like the signature events of the calendar year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, get everyone there instead of 6 people.
Yeah,
for example. I like it. So we had a great interview with Jim. I guess hitting really quick on signing news, Ian, because there really isn't a whole lot of on-field news since the last episode. Stuff we allude to in the episode. Not a lot has been reported in terms of signings.
Well, nothing has been. The Red Sox haven't officially announced any signings.
The Red Sox haven't announced any. There are 5 that have been,
which is to be clear though, that's not unusual. They usually do it in batches.
They usually do it in batches. The first batch this year is a little
strange.
First batch this year is a little late, but that doesn't mean anything. In fact, we know that guys are in Fort Myers from like social media and from reports. Like that's not, so the guys are there. I mean, they've basically said that they're going to introduce Kyle Teal, Nazan Zanatello, and Antonio Anderson at Fenway on Friday when they come back from the West Coast.
It's reported they're going to take batting practice on the field and do all that fun stuff.
Yep. So that's good. And so they're probably just waiting until Friday to announce everyone who's done at this point, which I would presume includes those 3. Teal is reportedly a little below slot. Zanatello, Chris Cotillo reported today, and Jim just confirmed in the interview, he's getting back of the first round money, which means at least $2.8 million. So it's like 2.8 to 3 is somewhere in the scale of what Zanatello is going to get. Antonio Anderson, again, if he's in that group, he's going to sign. I don't think there's been anything reported about his bonus. It's almost certainly over slot as a high school guy in the third round.
I think other than just over slot, we don't know anything more yet.
Yep. I didn't realize that. The Woo Sox turned the first triple play in franchise history tonight.
Oh, fun fact.
Fun. Dahlbeck to Sogard to Scott.
But yeah, they have. I mean, Baseball America has reported how many signings? Did you say like 7?
So Baseball America has reported 5.
5. Okay.
Or I think it's BA/Jim. Because it's like on the official thing that comes over the wire that they have access to, I think, and it's round 6 through 10. It's the guys they saved money on.
Yeah.
Chris Cotillo reported that the 5th rounder Connolly Early got slot, which I found a little bit surprising, but the more I thought about it, not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not that surprised. I
But
think as we talked about with Jim, that 4 to 5 seem rounds. Well, I guess they had 3 4th-round picks, but they're 4 picks and 4 to 5. It seems like they're mostly going to be slot or slightly under.
Yeah.
They didn't
Duffy
shave
is
a
a
lot
little
off.
below.
Yeah,
per
they didn't
Chad Jennings.
shave a ton off there. Whereas 6
Nope.
to 10 was just pure money saving.
Yep. And they didn't even save all that much. So like we
Not
got
compared to
questions
past
about
years. There were no 10K guys this year.
Yeah. I mean, like even like Isaac Coffey, tonight's all-star. He signed. I've just looked. I completely forgot he signed for $7,500 last year. Like it's kind of wild. So yeah, we'll see what winds up happening as far as signings go. So those are coming up. What else, Ian? Who knows what they're going to do at the deadline? They just dropped 2 of 3 to the A's. The Red Sox did, which is suboptimal.
Whatever. Not ideal, but I mean that's what this team's been doing all year. It's up and down.
Yeah, it's not great. So they basically have a couple of series to show the front office what they are.
Yeah,
which is exactly where they were last year.
I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to be a little. Yeah,
they're going to half and half it again.
Like you're not going to trade. You're not going to trade Paxton or any of the key contributors, but maybe you trade someone like an Adam Duvall. Or
I mean, the thing with Duvall is you've got like that's just freeing up playing time almost. Like it's of course you're going to move Adam Duvall if you can get something for him.
Or Kike Hernandez because they obviously have that logjam going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're trying to move.
I do think the biggest news story, if we're just going to hit on it quickly, is Trevor Story is starting a rehab assignment this weekend.
This weekend in Portland.
Yeah, that is.
Or I guess are they in New Hampshire or are they at home? They're home.
They're at home. Yeah. So that's a pretty welcome development, especially because as stabilizing as Yu Chang has been defensively, he's really struggled at the plate. So it would be nice to get Story back. I mean, I'm going to assume he's going to need 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks at least.
Oh, easy. Yeah. I mean, at least 2.
Yeah.
Like maybe 2 and they bring him back as a DH. But the thing is then when is he getting his infield reps?
And the other issue is if he's DHing, that just messes with the rest of the lineup because they also have to use the DH for someone else already.
Right.
So
Right.
But yeah, other than that, I think we'll mostly focus on the other stuff and hopefully have more signings to report on the next episode.
Absolutely. We didn't discuss this beforehand. We have one email. Do you want to just get to the one email to knock it out before it gets old?
Yeah, we don't want it to have to wait.
Yeah. All right. So we got one email. Again, if you want to email us, you go to podcast@soxprospects.com. And I should mention we are nearing our goal in the soxprospects.com donation drive. You can support us on patreon.com/soxprospects or go to soxprospects.com/donate to support our annual fundraising drive. I think we're at like over 80% towards our goal, Ian, I think Mike said. So we're getting there. But the one question we have this week at podcast@soxprospects.com is from Forrest, our Patreon supporter, who asks, Chris and Ian, Thad Ward has pitched in 22 games for the Nationals out of the bullpen. He has a 7.20 ERA with 26 strikeouts to 24 walks and is now in the 15-day IL with shoulder inflammation. Seemingly the Nats will have to make a decision to add him back to the roster sooner. We should get him back, right? Thanks, Forrest. Forrest, as a Washington, D.C. resident, the Nats stink. They can hang on to him. Ward is not coming back at this point. I think it's fair to say, right, Ian?
Yeah, I mean he's
got his 90 days. So
yeah, so there's no point in them offering him back. They'll activate him when he comes back, and if he doesn't come back, I think if
they wait till September, they wait till September. Like he's not coming back. So happy trails to Thaddeus Ward. I don't know that. I mean, who knows what he would have become? I'm not saying he was like ruined by pitching out of the bullpen early or something like that. But
he was pushed. He had to be pushed aggressively because that's the way Rule 5 works. That's why the Nationals took him. It's why he's obviously struggled, which isn't that surprising.
He wasn't ready yet, but that's what happens with Rule 5. So, yep. So that's the situation there. But again, podcast@soxprospects.com. Hit us up with your emails. And with that, I guess, Ian, should we throw anything else before we throw to the interview?
Nope.
All right. Here's our interview with Jim Callis of MLB.com. Hope you all enjoy. And, I don't think we'll do an outro. So again, thank you for all of us who support us. All of you, not all of us, all of you who support us on patreon.com/soxprospects. And while I'm pulling up our Patreon supporters, you can follow us on Twitter at Sox Prospects for the site, at Ian Kundle for Ian, and at SP Chris Hatfield for me. You can follow the website on Instagram as well, at Sox Prospects. And we want to thank our $5 level Patreon supporters. That would be Mark Herman. For this episode, we want to thank Mark Herman, Brian Cowan, Andrew K., Jeff Harwood, Dusty G., Michael Murphy, Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, and Nicholas Staropoli. Thank you all for your support. For Ian, I'm Chris. Here's our interview with Jim Callis, after which we'll just go straight to the outro. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums next week. All right, and bringing back another beloved annual tradition here on the SoxProspects.com podcast, we are thrilled to welcome back to the show Jim Callis of MLB Pipeline, MLB.com, MLB Network's draft coverage, all around great dude and friend of the show, longtime guest, multiple times. He keeps coming back despite our.
I got to catch Alex. Catch Alex.
We're trying. We got to figure out how to make that happen. But Jim, welcome back. Another draft is in the books. Really looking forward to chatting about it with you. And with you and the pup in the room there with you, and I guess we'll start where we usually do with these things. In addition to welcoming you back, and just let's start big picture. 20 rounds are in the books. What are you thinking of the Red Sox haul this year? Presuming signings go the way that we expect them to, and don't go Judd Fabian on us.
Well, I mean, Judd Fabian probably should sign with the Red Sox, right? Like, cost himself over $1 million by not signing with Boston. So I think Judd probably has more regrets than Boston does on that one, perhaps. But I don't know. I thought it was, I didn't rank it. I think what I ranked, like I ranked 6 or 8 drafts that stood out to me as the best drafts. I didn't have in that group, but I thought it was kind of like a solid middle of the pack effort, which, to be fair, when you're judging drafts this early, which is obviously way too early, the teams that have high first round picks, have extra first round picks, those teams stand out, and the Red Sox didn't. So I thought it was fine. I mean, I think the bulk of their value is probably going to come from their top 3 picks. I think they're going to get the majority of the bonus pool money. And after that, it was, they took a couple, I think rounds 4, and they had the 2 extra comp picks after round 4. And then round 5, they kind of played fairly normally. And then it was like discount guys round 6 through 10 for the most part. I have heard good things about Nelly Taylor, the JUCO outfielder they took at 11, who wasn't. I don't do Florida, so he wasn't in my half of draft coverage. I was one of Jonathan Mayo's guys, but I had a scout call me just out of the blue to tell me how much he liked Nelly Taylor. So it looks fine. I mean, it's obviously very early, but what did you guys think? Were you happy with the haul?
I mean, it seemed pretty good to us, I think. I think when you look at the top of the draft, it's interesting that they went with this kind of big 3 approach, sort of like they did last year with, Romero, Cutter Coffee, and the breakout star of the system this year in Roman Anthony, right? You can see the similarities in the Teal, Zanatello, Anderson trio, but they've talking with Devin Pearson. It does seem like they really like Matt Duffy, even though he's going to be below slot reportedly in the 4th. Campbell and Reamer are interesting. I can't complain about 2 UVA guys and a Brown grad transfer. So, my homerism is in full effect right now, but I don't know, Ian, we talked about it a little bit, but where are you at?
I thought it was a pretty on-brand draft for what they've done the last couple of years, even though there was a new, obviously there was a change at the top with who was running the draft room. But I think they did a good job, and just, what fell to them was Teal, and that's who they ended up grabbing. Obviously it seemed he was getting mocked a lot higher. But I don't know if you have any insight, but it seems like he just kind of it was a numbers game. He was probably the second choice for a lot of teams, and the guy they wanted ahead just was there. So he kind of just got pushed down a little bit.
Well, what you saw in him, I mean, we knew the top 5 guys went 1 through 5, which doesn't always happen. But the 5 guys who were clearly the top guys 1 through 5. And then 6 through 10, it was the draft was short on pitching, high end pitching, and you had 3 pitchers get taken and 2 teams cut deals. And I think that kind of pushed Teal out of, like, I think most of us thought he was kind of going in that 6 to 10 range somewhere, probably, and he kind of got pushed out of there. And then we don't know the bonus yet, but the Angels I'd heard on Nolan Shanwell really early, and the Diamondbacks did a discount deal with Tommy Troy at 12. So, like, I'm guessing that Teal probably wasn't going to sign for $4.4 million at 12. So it just so happened that he wound up at 14. And I will say, I do think, I mean, that's the best approach. that you should always draft that way if that's the way it worked out, which is you line up the player, you figure out how you want to line up the players, and then you let the board come to you. You don't say, hey, we want to grab a pitcher, or hey, we're not taking a high school kid here. You just see who's there, and my guess is they probably had a thought that, like, okay, maybe Teal could get to us because it was unclear where he was going. But they, I don't think they went into the draft. They said, okay, we're taking Kyle Teal at 14. You just wait and see what the board looks like when it gets to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the best approach at the top, because the last thing you want to do is have a situation which we've seen before where, somebody falls, but you've already shoehorned yourself into a pick by making a promise there for under or something like that. And then you end up having to pass on a player. But I think they balance it out with their high school shortstops after that. And then I think some of the college guys, like the pitching, they didn't go for a lot of velo. It seems like it's a lot of, fastball shape, command guys, a lot of strikes. I noticed that seemed like a trend. A lot of guys, with good, solid strike throwing profiles, either get ground balls or maybe miss some bats with, 90, 92 mile an hour fastballs. And then, yeah, a bunch of contact hitters from the college ranks too. I think like Justin Reimer, for example, seemed pretty interesting for someone who he seemed like he could have been in the midst of a little bit of a breakout, but then he tore his ACL. Christian Campbell seems like he has a little more upside than a normal college guy, especially as I think he was only a true freshman last year at Georgia Tech. So
no, I think he redshirted.
Did he redshirt a year? Okay.
Yeah, he was there for at least 2 years.
I know he only had 1 year of college stats.
Yeah, he's a redshirt freshman.
Got it. But yeah, it seems like they had a nice balance. It's just obviously now it's how many of them do they end up signing? It seems like the majority will sign, and then seeing where it goes from here. But nice balance of upside and kind of some higher floor picks later on, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, and I do think in general too that if I was running drafts, I would probably do the same thing where I would be aggressive early until I got to the point where it's like, okay, now the pool's coming into play and I can't be aggressive anymore. But I think you win with stars, so I would go for the high ceiling guys early, and then look for bargains when I had to start. Cost was an issue.
As far as, like you said, starting at the top with Teal and the great thing about having you on to talk draft is you also do the Sox list and cover the Sox system over at Pipeline. How do you think Teal fits in the system? Obviously, no future catcher of the major league team really in the rankings. Hickey's been hitting great, but a lot of questions on him behind the plate. Guys like Brannon and of that ilk are pretty far away and have their own questions. Seems like you never draft for need, but it certainly worked out nice as far as Teal's fit.
Yeah, and like the thing is, like, it's weird. Like, these guys get on the microscope, and like I started hearing more, and like I have the Southeast, but I don't have Florida, and I stop in North Carolina. So Kyle Teal's not a guy that I talked to a lot of people about all year. I did talk to people about him because he was going to be a first round pick, so I did that. And it's interesting because I thought he was regarded as a little bit better of defender. I guess he's got a strong arm. Like, the receiving needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Like, you started to hear that a little bit. Like, I'm not sure how good of a defender he is. But, I mean, I think he's average. I don't think it's a Nathan Hickey situation where you're like, oh, I hope he can catch. It's like, he can catch. He just might be an average defender behind the plate with a good arm. But, I do think, like, he's athletic enough, and I think he hits enough that he can profile to other positions too, which I always like. I just think, a lot of catching picks don't turn out. But I think they don't turn out when you take the guy, you're banking on the defense and you're hoping the bat, like, he has a bat. Hickey's kind of the same way, but like wasn't a first round pick, not as good defensively as Teal. And so like I even if Teal, if you decide like, oh, like we're not sure about the catching in the long run, I think he has value at other positions too. But like I think they have to be thrilled. I mean, he's one of the better college bats in the draft. He plays a premium position. I had not honestly thought. I thought about it for 2 seconds before I came into the Zoom call. I knew you guys were going to ask me, but I haven't thought about the top 30s at all because it's been like draft and signings were going fast and furious. So I hadn't thought about it a lot. I think Kyle Teal will make our top 100. We usually have 12 to 15 guys make the top 100. It's a deep draft. I don't feel like the top 100 is real strong. Like, so many guys have been graduated this year and pitchers have been hurt. So, like, I think he's safely going to clear the bar of guys who make the top 100. So, on our list right now, we've got 5 guys on the top 100: Meyer, Rafaela, York, Blyce, and Anthony. So he won't be lower than 6 on our list. And like, I think we'll probably flip Anthony up over at least Blyce when we update. Again, I haven't done any work on any of this. Just because Blyce is out for the year, Anthony's at a higher level, similar age, so we probably flip Anthony or Blyce. I don't know. I think you could argue Teal. Like, I still know exactly what to make it Nick York, but Nick's hitting in Double-A at the same age Teal is right now. So I don't know, like 4. I really haven't thought about it, but I feel like I'd put him at 4. Where do you guys think you're going to put Teal on your list?
I think we're looking at it as not necessarily to speak for anyone else on the site because we haven't officially ranked them yet, but it seems like, I mean, he's definitely top 6, I think is fair to say, Ian.
Yeah, we have the same top group as you do. I think it's pretty,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of dispute there's that top 5 plus Teal. So I think it's those top 6. And then, as you said, it's kind of just, yeah. Like,
and the thing is the ordering is going to be different for us too. I mean, we've kind of previewed.
Yeah, we have Anthony. We're gonna have Anthony. We're gonna put Anthony at second in the system.
I mean, if you go on the year he's having, and like the data's
insane.
Yeah,
for his age,
he maybe should be number 2.
Yeah,
but like, so, and like he's 19 and he's in high A. I mean, I know it hasn't been for long, but he's 19 and he's tearing it up in a small sample size high A. So like I think it's funny. I think you could put those guys in just about any order. Like if you want to put Teal 3, I think you could put Teal 3. I don't subscribe to he hasn't proven anything yet. So you got to put him behind, these other guys who've proven stuff. But like, I think you could put him anywhere from 3 to 6.
Yeah, I think that's the exact range we were thinking of too.
Yeah, it's just like you said, it depends on what you think of the other guys too. It's all a relative exercise, right? So, interesting. You're hearing that on the defense too, because Teal, hearing Brian O'Connor talk about him, he threw out the athleticism thing in the other positions and like almost talked about him like a Biggio type, and you hate to throw Hall of Fame comps out, but just as athletic catcher who in theory could go play another position if he needed to, but it's not in the. I remember at least one person tweeting on draft night at me like, "Oh, they drafted a catcher who's going to have to move." It's like, no, that's not what he means at all. Like, he's saying he's an athlete, which is good. And I think it's something that they're starting to really, not starting, but something they really did seem to focus on this year. And talking to Devin Pearson after the draft, he did say, athletes in makeup.
Well, and the thing is too, like, I don't think you're going to move him off a catcher, but if you really believe in his bat, like I'm of the mind, I know it's hard to find catchers, but if you really believe in a catcher's bat, maximize the bat and put him in a less stressful position where he's going to be in the lineup more. He's not going to be beat up. And again, I'm not saying they should do that with Kyle Teal because I think Kyle Teal, like it's more like the Kyle Schwarber, Nathan Hickey, Tyler Siderstrom, like
Will Myers.
Like, if you don't think these guys are going to be able to catch, just maximize the bat instead of wasting 2 or 3 years trying to make him into a fringy catcher. But I think Teal's better than that. So.
Well, I think especially now with the way stealing is so back basically in the major league sphere, like if your catcher can't throw at all, it becomes a major problem now. And I look at Hickey, and that's obviously his biggest issue.
What's he at 85 on the year, Ian, or something?
It's bad. The number of steals he's given up is remarkable. And I just look at guys like that. You kind of just have to, it might be better just to make that call early with how important catcher defense is.
Yeah.
I guess, moving then to the high school guys who, don't have that national profile necessarily, although Zanatello, it seems like he's trying to make that happen with all the media they have him doing, which I get. My God, I get if you're MLB, you want to put that kid on camera. Just, the charisma. But that said, he's a guy who's getting above slot. Reports are that he's getting well above slot at 50. Slot for the pick is roughly 1.7. The report coming out of from Chris Cotillo earlier today is he's getting back of the first round money.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we getting with Zanatello here? They're going to play him at both short and center, apparently, is what Devin Pearson said. You all had him at 52 on the MLB pipeline list. What can you tell us about the high schooler out of Missouri?
Yeah, it's funny. So when we were doing our preseason list, we do a top 100 that usually comes out in December. He was like the favorite of every area guy I had who had Missouri. Like he was everybody's favorite player. It was funny because at one point I talked to a guy and he's like, I have a guy I'm hoping you don't bring up because I hope people are sleeping on him. And I was like, You're not talking about Zanatello, are you? And he's like, oh yeah, I am. And I was like, nobody's sleeping on that guy. Like everybody wants that guy. And they talked about, like you just alluded to, it's the tools and the charisma. Like, just love the kid. The guy's performed. He's been in all kinds of events. He's performed. Anybody watched the draft? He was at the draft. We had him on briefly. I mean, that smile, it's like an 80s smile. Had his family with him. His little sister's crying with tears
Drip
of
game
joy.
strong. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was already cool. But like, so that part's cool. It's great. It's great makeup. But like the tools too. Like he has some of the best all around tools in the draft. I mean, he's got kind of a wiry body, but like just really strong hands and wrists and bat speed, and it could be 25 homer potential. It's not like the biggest question, like with any high school kid, usually is how much is he going to hit? It's not big swing and miss. It's not like a textbook swing, but he makes a lot of hard contact against good pitching on the showcase circuit. He worked counts fine. The weird thing is, like, like so most scouts, you get run times on a guy out of the batter's box, which isn't always the best way to do it because some guys have bigger swings than others. Anyway, like depending on who you talk to and which ground ball, it's not that he doesn't run guys out, but I think sometimes he takes a big hack. I've had on the 20 to 80 scale where 50 is average, I've had grades anywhere from 45 to 70 on his running. It's like
that's not very helpful.
Like I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. Everybody kind of chuckles. So like we'll kind of call the middle and say it's like 55 or 60. He's got a strong arm, like you said. Like he's gonna play some shortstop. He can play some center field. I think he would really profile at third base. So there's like a lot to get excited about.
Is there almost like I hate making people do comps because I hate doing comps, but just is it the type of guy who's going to need that time to in the lower minors to coalesce the raw tools, or do you think he's looking at what say like an Anthony has done this year? Not that we're saying he's going to be Anthony, but we'll go to full season next year, and you think might be able to hold his own.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel good about his track record. He's performed really well at a lot of top events. I don't think he's like the different types of players, but like if you're comparing him to Mikey Romero, middle infielder they took with their first pick last year. I think Mikey was a more advanced hitter than Zanatello is, but Zanatello's physical tools are clearly, no slight to Mikey Romero, clearly better. He's like probably a grade better runner, at least a grade better power, grade better arm, a lot more defensive versatility. They're different types of players, but I don't think he's necessarily going to come in. I mean, the fun thing is like Roman Anthony was supposed to be somewhat raw as a hitter too. Like he cleaned it up some as a high school senior, and he's been really good this year. Like I could see a world, and this is not a slight on Kyle Teal, where if Zanatello hits the ground running, that Zanatello moves ahead of him on prospect lists at some point. And I like Kyle Teal. If Zanatello hits, he's got probably, I'd say if Zanatello hits, he probably has the best all-around tools in the system, except for maybe Blyce, but Zanatello could be a shortstop. So he could be really, really good. Like I think I don't think he's nearly as polished as Marcelo is, but his like just physical tools, like he's quicker, it's probably comparable power, comparable arm, like and again, I'm not saying he's gonna rank ahead of Marcelo, but like his tools are pretty crazy.
Well, and I think when you're describing that, it sounds like there's a pretty wide error bar here. Like there's a lot of risk. There's high ceiling, but there's obviously a low floor too, and that's probably why it sounds like probably one of the reasons he fell to where he did in the draft, along with the bonus, obviously too, if he's getting substantially over slot. But with their next pick, they went back to the high school rank and took another high school shortstop in Antonio Anderson. But it seems like it's a pretty different profile to Zanatello. Can you talk a little bit about him and what you saw from him? Because I think he's in your area in Georgia, right?
Yeah, he is, and I think he's more of a he's not a first base only guy, but you're getting the bat with Antonio Anderson. I mean, it's probably slightly below average speed. He's not a real twitchy athlete. I think he's more of a third baseman. He does have some arm strength. My guess is you always try a guy at the most difficult position that he might be able to play. So maybe you try him at second base, but I think he's probably more of a corner guy in the end. But like, it's a really interesting bat. It's a switch hitter. He's probably a little bit better from the left side. He's got a good approach. He makes adjustments at the plate. Like, he's shown he can hit breaking balls. He should get a little bit stronger. So, I mean, I think you're looking at a guy who could hit, 270 with 20 homers. Like, it's a safer bat than Zanatella. But Zanatella is a significantly better athlete.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes we paint with this broad brush of like high school shortstop means raw and toolsy, and all the tools need to come together, and he's a super athlete, and da 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 da. And it isn't. It's good to hear that these are two high school infielders. They are very different in terms of what they bring to the table. But it's kind of funny. I remember, when they draft these guys, I search my Twitter feed for what anyone who I follow has said about them, and searching for Anderson was a lot of Jim Callis, singing the praises of Antonio Anderson at, like, I'm trying to think if it was like the Combine maybe or something, but it seemed like he came up a few times for you as someone that you really liked.
It was more
whether
Zanatello. I think you're confusing the two, because I don't.
Maybe
feel
it's
like
Zanatello.
I was like a big Zanatello fan.
Oh, okay, maybe it's Zanatello.
I like Anderson fine. Like, it's funny. I mean, both those guys went almost exactly where we had them ranked.
Yeah,
which doesn't really mean anything. But it's like they both kind of went where they should, where we felt they should have gone in a draft, and like, that's actually probably a little surprising, because like, we have guys who aren't going to sign also on our list, because we don't worry about signability. Which, like, I don't think too many guys we had ranked ahead of Zanatello aren't going to sign, but there's probably a half dozen guys we had ranked ahead of Antonio who are going to wind up in college. But yeah, I felt like both those guys kind of went where they should go. Like, and it's weird. Like, I'm not trying to say that, like, Zanatello, I don't think it's that people don't think he can hit, and he has produced. It's just, it's not like a picturesque right-handed swing, if there is such a thing. So I think guys want to see how that plays a little bit, because if you felt even a little more convicted in Zanatello's bat, then that guy's going, first round, sandwich round somewhere.
Sure. Makes sense. And he's at least getting that bonus. I mean, it's kind of interesting to think of Zanatello as getting more money than anyone from last year's draft got, based on the reports and your confirmation here, it sounds like. So that makes sense. I guess after that we go pretty college heavy. You mentioned Nelly Taylor. I mean, is there anyone from this kind of, I guess maybe we can just start with day two, unless you think we should just jump to Nelly Taylor as someone who you heard good things about.
Fine.
But
yeah, day two's fine.
Yeah, I mean, for day two, was there anybody who stood out to you? I mean, I know at the end they definitely went, on saving some money on some guys, the numbers that we've heard reported already, but it's that kind of Duffy, Campbell, Reamer, Connolly early, and then you get to the bonus guys group. Anyone in there that really stood out to you as a guy to watch?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, like, day two didn't really blow me away. But again, when you're given the money they're going to give their first three guys, like, you have to save money on day two. Like, I'll admit, I did not know much about Matt Duffy, because I don't have the Northeast. He wasn't on our list. Jonathan was a guy that Jonathan ranked. Like, I know it's not, I don't think he throws as hard, but like, it kind of reminded me of Dalton Rogers a little bit, where a guy who throws like a ton of fastballs in college and gets a lot of swings and misses. And Rogers has been interesting this year. So I don't really know what to make of Matt Duffy. He's interesting. I'm not the biggest Christian Campbell fan in the world. I think he's one of those guys who looks better on paper than he does on the diamond. Like, he hit 376 and only struck out 17 times. He can hit. He can really hit. I don't know how much power is there. I think he's got some speed, but he doesn't steal bases. He's got like a really funky arm stroke. So I don't think he can play the infield in pro ball. A lot of scouts I talked to do not think he can play the infield as pro. So I'm not really sure what you have there. I think you have a guy who can hit for average, and I guess he's going to play the outfield in the long run. So I just did not have great reports on Christian Campbell. So that one, I'm not, like I said, I'm going to be the low guy on him. Like, again, I feel bad. I'm trashing poor Christian Campbell. Christian Campbell's not making the midseason top 30 for us. I'll just say that right now. Like, if he goes out, like, look, Chase Meadrock didn't need either. Chase, bat only. Like, I think Christian Campbell's a better athlete than Chase, and Chase is on the list. He made the list going into the year. Like, he's gonna have to prove it to me, I guess what I'm saying. Reamer kind of has to prove it too, just because he has to come back from a torn ACL. He'd struck out, I think, 2 times before he got hurt. 15 to 15 to walk strikeout ratio, which you don't see very often. I think somebody just quoted me a stat. I think 700 swings against fastballs the last 2 years. He had 2% swing and miss. He just does not miss fastballs at all.
Interesting.
I'm not sure how much power he has with Wood. He can switch hit. He can run a little bit. It's weird. It's kind of similar profile to Christian Campbell, really. And he's coming back from a knee injury, so we'll see. It's not. I don't think he has the funky arm slot, but it's not like a shortstop arm. I don't think he's got shortstop arm strength. So I think he's probably more of a second baseman than a shortstop. And I know I'd also heard this S2 cognition test that a lot of teams use, a lot of colleges use. He apparently blew that away. He did great on this cognition test that teams administer. So he'll be interesting. I'd heard talk he might go in the second or third round. There was this rumor all of a sudden, which didn't happen, but I'm not surprised he went there despite his season. But those two guys are kind of similar players. Campbell's a little more physical and maybe slightly more athletic, but Reamer's pretty athletic too.
And then
I heard something similar.
Go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say I heard similar about Reamer defensively, that it's a second base profile because the arm is limited, not enough for shortstop. Is basically what I was told. So yeah. But as you said, the contact skills to me, they really stood out there. And I know you said, as you talked about, the power is the big question mark, and I think the bats this year in college were weird. Maybe you'll have a better idea of that than me, but it seemed like power was way up in college this year. But I just thought it was interesting that in his small sample this year, I mean, he had more home runs than he had all of last year at Wright State. So he had a 645 slug this year, obviously a small sample, whereas only a 459 last year. So maybe there was some sort of gains there that we didn't get to see fully because of the season got cut short.
Yeah, it's hard to say because it's such a limited sample size.
It's 45 at bats or plate appearances or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was trying to look up. My computer's being slow. The scouts I talked to, wherever he played summer ball last year, I don't think he hit for a lot of power with wood bats. So that was, but again, I mean, maybe he figured something out and was driving the ball a little better. But yeah, I mean, they're both interesting. Look, they got him in a good spot in the draft. It's not like they reached and they took those guys in the third round or something. But like I said, it's interesting that they went. I mean, even Teal's a guy who made a lot of contact too. I mean, he had some power as well, but it does seem like that's something they focus. Anderson, I think, is a pretty good contact bat also. So that seems like they really emphasize that. Maybe they're turning into the Guardians. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. It seems like it's a lot of, you either have to have really good contact skills or you have to have really big tools. If you're an offensive player, there's not really an in between. It seems with the profile of guys they've targeted the last couple of draft classes.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Something that's getting discussed a lot on our forum, Jim, looking, I guess, at day 3 then, is whether or not, I think everyone's kind of resigned to the fact that, not resigned, but everyone kind of figures the 20th rounder, Robert Orlowski, the high school pitcher out of Idaho, isn't going to sign. And who knows on Dylan Schlegel, the Texas high schooler, but the one we keep seeing a lot of discussion about is Phoenix Call, the California shortstop / outfielder who they took in the 15th round. Are you hearing, or have you heard anything, or do you have any conjecture on whether or not that's even in play at this point? It would seem that a first round bonus for Zanatello would probably foreclose that, but just wondering if you had any thoughts on whether that's a possibility or not. Ranked 226 on your list.
Yeah, I don't know what his asking price is. I mean, he's interesting. He's athletic. He's got some power potential. It seems like the Red Sox most of the time when they take the guys that low, it's more of a backup plan in case something falls through with somebody. And based on what we think Anderson's getting, I can't imagine that they're saving. I mean, Kyle Teal's got to be in the neighborhood of slot. They're not going to sign Kyle Teal for, I wouldn't think, $4 million and save a bunch of money there. I got to think Antonio Anderson, as a high school guy, third round, usually those guys are over slot to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard. I mean, they went, the fact that they went so heavy discounts so early on day 2 makes me think that they probably are paying Anderson and Zanatello. And, like the 11th rounder, Nelly Taylor is really interesting. I don't know what he's getting. I know I've talked to some scouts who really like him, his athleticism. He's another Tom Kochman special, and Tom knows Florida junior colleges.
Yes, he
And
does.
he had a Florida State commitment, so it's not like that might. I'm questioning whether that's just going to be $150,000 in the 11th round. My guess is it's probably going to be at least a little more than that. So I would say, and it's pure speculation, but just based on the guys they drafted, I don't think they're going to get Phoenix Call.
Mm-hmm. I think that sounds about right. I mean, it would be nice. Pearson called him the best high school defender he's ever seen on the post draft media availability. Yeah, but that said, someone on our board who was reading a little bit too much into the comment was like, if you're actually going to try and negotiate with that player, why are you saying that? But that's also not really how it works, right? I mean, they drafted him knowing the number.
Yeah, they know his number when they took him.
I mean, I guess if you're going to give more than $1 million over slot to Zanatello, that's your fallback if something falls through there, right? I mean, because even if you lose Zanatello's,
that's your backup plan. Like, you would be foolish. And look, the Mets did it the year they didn't sign Kumar Rocker. But like, if you're going to save money to pay a guy over slot, and look, Zanatello, they probably are not too concerned about, because I don't know that he specifically did this, but the vast majority of players who were at the combine did physicals. So my guess is that Zantel did a physical, and like, there's not going to be any, it's like, there's no surprises there. It's not like we're taking him and something's going to show up. But like, again, and I don't think Zantel is going to turn down the money or anything like that. But I think that's exactly right. I think you're just positioning yourself, hey, if we're saving $1 million plus to get to Zantello and that falls through, you want to spend the money on players. You can't go back and say, hey, all those seniors we took in round 6 or 10, we'd like a do-over. We want to take regular guys now. You can't do that. So, like, I think you give that money maybe. And again, I don't know what Phoenix calls to getting, but like, you Phoenix call, and then maybe there's money left over for Schlegel or Orlovsky or something. But I think that's exactly what they did. The same thing last year with Keelan, the infielder from Wisconsin, wanted to go to Louisville.
Yeah,
like they took him 13th or 15th round. But I think that was probably fall back if like Brandon fell through, or one of the high school guys they took up high fell through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed.
I mean,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, because if you look at it, the first 3 are gonna get big bonuses. The next 4 picks are all gonna be, it seems like, slottish or just under it. And then, as you said, 6 to 10 is all the high school guys. So the math just gets really hard to figure out how you're gonna get call, assuming the bonuses for Zanatello and Anderson are well over slot.
Yeah. I will say, for a guy, Caden Rose is for a guy who's like, well, I guess he's not 22 till October, but like, he's had some injuries at Alabama. But I had some scouts who are like, you know what, like, he can play up the middle. He's athletic. He's got some power. Like, they thought Caden Rose might be a little bit of a sleeper. I think his dad's a coach. I think at the high school level. But he's like one of those guys who's grew up around the game, and he like has good instincts. And I had guys tell me like that was kind of a good sleeper pick in the 7th round for the Red Sox.
Yeah, I think he was pretty highly regarded coming out of high school too. I think he might have been a shortstop. Yeah, but obviously he went to Alabama. I was going to ask actually if you had any thoughts on the 5th round pick, Connolly Early. It seems like they clearly like him. They're giving him slot in the 5th round, so about $400K, and he seemed like someone who was a real performer for that UVA team this year, but didn't have a lot of hype coming into the draft, maybe because of his stuffer. I was curious what your thoughts on him were.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's kind of similar to Duffy in that, it's not big time stuff, but he's a performer. Again, I don't do Virginia, so I didn't talk to a lot of guys about him to get like a feel as to what they thought of him. But like, I think he's kind of average stuff across the board. But he transferred from Army and he performed really well for Virginia, and he's always throwing a ton of strikes. So, I don't. It's like just like we're talking about. Campbell and Reamer had kind of similar profile. Like Duffy and Early kind of have a similar profile to me too.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting when you started talking about Rose, it made me think of Ammons a little bit too, because he was someone who I think he was going to be Clemson's Friday starter. Then he got hurt this year, and they were able to get him for somewhat of a discount. Granted, he was a senior. I guess he could have gone back though for another year, but it seems like kind of maybe with Rose, they might have like something, think with the injury might have got them a little bit of a discount, and they like the player more than the bonus they might have given him.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how those guys play out. But again, I do think, we're going to probably remember this draft based on how good those top three players are.
That makes sense. I guess as far as draft, one question I had, because I found this interesting when we were talking about guys who they might not sign. I did see, I guess there's a couple of teams that have already signed every single pick they made. And in these days of the 20.
I was just say there's teams like to announce all their picks at once. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's teams that drafted all college guys in rounds 11 through 20 and did that.
Yeah. I was just going to ask how many teams do that in the era of the 20-round draft? Because it's just not something I've been, like, I was aware of, like, the Angels and to a somewhat lesser degree other teams really going pitcher heavy, but like I hadn't been aware of the like signing every single pick thing. Like, is that a thing for a lot of teams?
I think a couple teams have done it. I mean, the 20-round draft is only. Are we in year 3 or year 2? I can't remember.
I think year 3 because they cut it because 2020 was the 5.
2020 was the 5 round.
Yeah. So I think it's happened a couple of times. I mean, it makes sense to some extent. I mean, because when you're drafting 40 guys, you were never going to sign.
Right.
I think maybe it happened once or twice, but like you weren't going to sign 40 players usually unless you're really trying to rebuild your system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I honestly don't really think it matters one way or the other. Like if you're the Rockies and you signed all 21 of your picks, you got to basically clear out 21 spots for guys too. Like,
right.
So
maybe more if they drop to 165 is the other thing, right?
I think if they drop the overall roster size smaller, you're gonna have teams like aren't gonna want to sign 21 guys at all, or 20 or however many to be.
It's true. All right. Well, I guess maybe that kind of finishes draft, but while we've got you for a few more minutes, just as far as the Red Sox system this year, it's still kind of, Marcelo and everybody else to some degree, but just in terms of feedback you're getting on the players, I know you've been deep in draft coverage, so I don't know how much time you've had to do, the guys that have already been acquired and signed and are playing in the minors, but just in terms of, like we talked a little bit about that top group. Are you hearing things that, scouts or teams might like guys better than others, especially as we're coming up on the trading deadline too, where we might be hearing some of those names tossed around? Anyone that, might have maybe higher or lower standing, within the game based on what you've heard, or maybe you haven't had time. It might be a
I haven't done a lot
question.
of it. I mean, I think I have to say I haven't done a lot of it. I mean, I think the guy who's raised his profile the most is Roman Anthony, just because he's a data darling. It was interesting. Like he wasn't putting up big numbers in low A, as you guys know, but he was putting up great data, and they decided to promote him, and he's just gone off in the last 3 weeks in high A. Like I don't know that they're going to necessarily go make a blockbuster, but like I think Roman Anthony would be in high demand if you wanted to trade him. Like the rest of the guys, like. I mean, I think Rafael after a bad start has kind of bounced back some. I still a great defender, still extremely, extremely aggressive at the plate, and I think people wonder about that. And I think people also wonder just a little bit. He's just not a big guy. Is that going to hold up for 162 games? Like, so I think his value is kind of the same. I think Nick York has looked. Maybe not as good, but more like 2021 Nick York than 2022 Nick York. I do think there's question as to whether he's a second baseman. Like, is he athletic enough to play second base at the big league level? And I think there's some scouts who question that. And if he's not a second baseman, then what is he? A left fielder, right? I mean, there aren't too many options. So like that's important. Like he's going to have to figure that out. Blyce got hurt. So we, didn't get to see much of him, but like his tools look good, but he's kind of hurt, and I don't know, like if they were like, they're not going to trade for Ohtani, obviously. I don't think, I don't know if you, but even if they were, like, I think it would be hard for them to put together a competitive package for Ohtani if Ohtani was actually on the market and there were other teams, like a bunch of teams going. I just don't think they have that kind of ammunition, unless it was like, take our 5 best prospects, take all of them. I still don't see. I don't see really pitchers like we've talked about. Their pitching wasn't real strong coming into the year, and I still don't think it's very strong. I'm not. He's he's okay, but I'm just not a big Shane Drohan believer. He tore up AA, and it hasn't been that great in AAA, and it's not overpowering stuff. And now he's walking guys. I just their pitching still they need a lot of help with their pitching prospects.
Yeah, Drohan stuff. I've seen him a couple times at AAA, and it's not the same stuff he was showing at AA. It seems to have like backed up a little bit compared to where it was earlier in this season when he came out firing with obviously more velo, that cutter that's now morphed into a slider. It's not the same as it was in AA for whatever reason.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, who in your mind? I mean, who in your mind is it? Like, I'm trying to come up with guys who I feel like have made a big jump, and I don't know if they like. I would say big jump. I think people respect Meteorith a little bit more. Meteorith, now that we've seen him climb a couple levels, but like I don't think they've had a guy who was like in the 20s, and now we're like, oh man, that guy's a top 10 prospect.
Yeah,
well, I think it was Drohan from the beginning of the year now, right? Because like we went into camp with Drohan in the 20s, and now he's top 10 for us. But it's like,
where would you guys put him this season? Because you know how we do our list. We do our preseason list,
yeah,
and then we add guys as people graduate. And he was, I think, the first guy I added, but it was like after like 2 starts, so I wasn't going to go crazy. So I just added him at the bottom.
Yeah,
but like I don't know, I don't know that I put him. Especially once I add the draft guys in, I don't know that I put him in the top 15. Maybe I would, but it would be toward the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the pitchers, that it's weird because, as you said, like Drohan's had his real struggles in AAA, but you look at like Luis Perales and Wickelman Gonzalez they had slow starts. Their first month or so were pretty rough, but since then they've both been missing a ton of bats, still walking a few too many guys, but the raw stuff looks good. But with them, there's a lot of reliever risk in Gonzalez's case. He's now in AA at least, so he's a little closer to the big leagues. But Perales is further away, and it's just if you're looking for stuff, they're probably the top guys when it comes to pitchers. But still, at the same time, they're either really far away or there's a lot of questions with them. So yeah, it's like I guess maybe they've solidified their positions in the top 15 or so. But as you said, it's hard to find another guy who's taken that massive step from outside into the top 10 area.
Yeah, so it'll be I'll be curious to say. Like I said, I need to dive into it. I'll be curious to see how it kind of shakes out. But it seems like more guys have backed up a little bit than have taken steps forward overall.
I think with the guys in the teens, like Mata getting hurt didn't help. Paulinho has had some real struggles this year. Yeah, I could see that with some of those guys in that range, especially.
And I still don't know what to make of Blaze Jordan.
I don't either. He's in AA now, so we'll at least get a good test of him pitching because he's done what he needed to do. He went back to Greenville and dominated. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one to see how he handles that adjustment to AA pitching.
And we'll certainly hear about it. We'll certainly hear plenty about it. Twitter's favorite Red Sox prospect, Blaze Jordan.
Well, it's so weird because I think we talked about this when we did the preseason podcast with Alex. Like he's kind of turned into a different player. Like I know Nick York had a crazy 2022, but like he had better contact rates than Nick York in 2022, and I never would have taken that bet. Like I'd be right. There's no shot. And even like this year, I think the contact rate stayed about the same, or maybe it's even.
I think it's better than it was last year in Greenville. Obviously, he's returning there, but yeah.
But like he's not like he already has more homers than he had all last year, but he's not like I'm sure you guys have seen this too. Like the data, he's the opposite of Roman Anthony. The data does not love him.
Yeah,
no.
A lot of chase.
He's like making contact, and I don't think he's hitting the ball as hard as he used to,
no.
or at least we thought he would. He's kind of morphed into a weird profile, and then the bar I think is going to be higher for him at the big league level because I think he's pretty clearly a first baseman. They should still try it, and I think he works hard, but I think at best you're getting probably an adequate third baseman at best. And with Devers, I mean, not gonna play third anyway. So.
Right. And I mean that's what he's had. I mean, he's in an infield right now with Meyer, York, and Mydroff. And so he's just playing nothing but first base, more or less, unless one of those guys is getting a day off or DHing, just because I think that's part of why they kept him in Greenville as long as they did, because it was their only opportunity to get him any reps
Right.
at third, while those guys were all in double A. So interesting. All right. Well, Ian, I think we're good. Awesome. Jim, it's always a distinct pleasure on this end. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to the next time we chat, and or run into you randomly at an airport or something like that.
We should just start calling Jim on episodes so he can just start racking up those appearances, like
That's
just
true.
at the end of the
How
episode.
far am I behind Alex?
I think you were like neck and neck. So this might
It was
you might
like
be
1 or
tied with him
2,
now.
yeah.
It was 1 or 2.
You haven't had him on during the season?
Not yet.
We haven't had him on during the season yet. No, we usually have him on for his rankings. So I think that was part of the ploy to get you on in the off season with him for the Jamboree, was to help you with the catching up. So
yeah,
we love the both of you, and we want you to be equals in everyone's eyes as you are in ours.
Yeah, no,
How about
I
that?
have, like I said, like every time we talk about it, I felt that when I was at Baseball America, because I always felt we were better off doing as many top 30s in-house as we could. But I knew Alex was one of the correspondents who was so plugged in, he would do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed doing the Red Sox. I was like, I'm not giving up the Red Sox. and when I left to go to MLB.com, he took over, and he's done a great job, which I always knew he would. But I was like, you know what? I just enjoy doing the Red Sox too much, so I'm not giving them up.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, now we're all the better for it because we get you both. So
yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun comparing the lists. And I think our lists wind up pretty similar too. So.
Yeah, I was looking recently at the updated lists. Everyone's pretty in lockstep. Almost all of the top 30 is more or less the same players on most of them. So,
and I know Baseball America's like done their midseason update. We haven't done ours yet. Like, and I'll say, I mean, I say this every time, but I do sincerely mean it. I wish, because I do our Red Sox list, I wish at least the 10 teams I did all had like a comparable site to Sox prospects. Now there are prospect sites and minor league sites, and maybe you know the answer to this. Like you could take yourselves out of the running. You could tell me who is the best site besides you guys, but there's nobody who I think comes close to covering prospects like for a specific team like you guys do. I mean, you go 60 deep, but you've got reports on, I don't know, probably 150 players, if not more. You constantly have news. You constantly are seeing players. I mean, you stay on top of everything. I mean, I mean, I just appreciate your site so much. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times where there might be like a little blank I'm trying to fill in, and it's like, oh, I don't want to text, Ben Crockett about, some obscure fact. So I'm seeing if I can find on Google first, and I find it at Sox Prospects. I mean, the site, how long has the site been around now? I know it's been a while.
Mike, I think this is our 20th anniversary we're coming up on.
Yeah, actually. I mean, it's an unbelievable site. You guys deserve, I mean, like so much credit. Like the people you have working there, the job you do, how complete it is. Keep up the good work. Because like I said, man, I think you guys have a lot of credibility because you aren't going berserk over every player in the system that they can't miss. And I think you guys are really, really. So like I said, I just wish every team, or at least the 10 teams I cover, had something like this, because it's great. Like I mean, I'll even, like when we have a guy graduate, oh yeah, I have a working list of guys I want to add. But I'll admit, like, I always like, okay, I'm going to go to Sox Prospects and just see, like, do they have somebody like 22 that, like, maybe I'm not thinking about that, like, oh yeah, I should ask about, Yoel and Cespedes or whoever. Like, it's just like, it's just a very good list. So, and you guys do great work, and it's not, the news, it's all good. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Jim. We appreciate it.
Thank
you. The check is in the mail. Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure as always, man.
Every time, but I do mean it. So.
No, awesome. We really appreciate it because obviously, been following your work for a long time, so that means a lot.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Jim, and we'll definitely have you on again soon, man.
Okay, sounds good. Get me on before Alex comes back. So.
We'll try.